I hope everyone's doing well. This is a sit-down news first, and we'll be discussing current mob topics. So with no further ado, last month, Colombo member John Staluppi purchased another mega yacht, which he'll be renaming Golden Eye. The 54-meter Mangusta Grand Sport 54 motor yacht is named Cinear and was listed for $34,395,464. I believe this will be Staluppi's 18th yacht, which the majority are named after James Bond movies. Staluppi is someone who came from nothing and built a multi-million-dollar automobile business. Many years ago, he convinced the Japanese automaker Honda, a car brand unheard of at the time, to appoint him as the official Honda dealer in the United States. So John Staluppi absolutely doesn't have to depend on street rackets and is able to afford the finer things in life with legitimate income. A viewer wants to know my thoughts and opinion on Stevie Cria's motion for compassionate release being denied. Apparently, back in April 2024, Cria's lawyers filed for compassionate release due to his being diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. That request has since been denied. Now that I think of it, on a few occasions, I've seen Stevie sneak a cigarette. Cria, like numerous other federal inmates who are terminally ill, will most likely die in custody. A few are granted compassionate release, and the majority of people who put in are not. It's an unfortunate situation to have to die in that environment. Personally, I don't wish illness or ill will on anyone, especially cancer. However, I'll say this. I believe when a person, like Cria's son, continues acts of treachery, cowardly acts, like employing hackers and sabotaging, things considered negative and evil, he invites that same negativity and evil into his life, and more importantly, into his father's predicament. In my final opinion, when you think you're slick, God will show you otherwise. Joe Waverly Kekase, properly pronounced Kakase, is alleged to be the Colombo underboss, and I could see him being chosen for an administrative position. He's held every administrative position possible. In 2004, he pled the charges, which included 4 murders, in exchange for a 20-year sentence. And in late 2008, he was indicted again for the murder of police officer Ralph Doles, who married his ex-wife. By the time that case went to trial in 2013, he was acquitted of that charge and has basically kept a low profile since his release in 2020. He's presently 83 years old and doesn't have many active years ahead of him. As expected, the old timers are dying off, and with every death goes what the mob once represented. The newly inducted members that take their place have no clue, and to no surprise, because the guys who schooled them are also clueless. Let's switch to Italy for a minute. A viewer wants to know what the 'Ndrangheta's strategy is that caused them to overshadow the Sicilian Mafia and become almost untouchable. To start with, it's not so much a strategy as opposed to the organization's structure, unlike Sicilian and American Cosa Nostra. And as we just mentioned, Joe Waverly, we don't know the top tier of the 'Ndrangheta. Law enforcement doesn't know, and neither does its members. Law enforcement's main objective is to dismantle organizations such as the 'Ndrangheta. One of their goals is to take out its leadership, or at the very least disrupt it. With Cosa Nostra, they prove to be able to do just that. But when it comes to the 'Ndrangheta, the best they can do is put clan bosses in prison. The nucleus of the organization remains intact. And this is the very reason the 'Ndrangheta overshadowed the Sicilian Mafia and remains an international organized crime super mafia. In the same breath, someone else wants to know, since the global increase in cocaine consumption and the 'Ndrangheta's vice grip on the cocaine trade, would it be surprising if a significant transnational drug trafficking indictment dropped in the near future involving a New York family? Fast money is what makes the mob's heartbeat. With that said, it wouldn't surprise me in the least if an indictment included one or more of the New York families. What's your opinion on the war going on in Montreal, Canada, and if it has any bearing on the streets of New York? From my understanding, the main issue in Canada is control of the drug trade as well as the street rackets. It's been ongoing and involves the Rizzuto organization and those opposed to it, in some instances, former Rizzuto associates. I don't believe it has any bearing in New York. Since the 1999 murder of George Shasha, the Canadian Bonanno faction, which is the Rizzuto organization, essentially detached itself. They may have since restored their ties, but would still be expected to handle their business in Canada. How long do you feel Anthony Barada and Frank Papani will last on the new Lucchese administration? Well, Barada is 86 years old, and Frankie Bones, or what he prefers to be called now, Frankie Sharp, is only 67. Mikey DeSantis is 71. So excluding indictments, they'll most likely have a good run, but will more than likely need to replace Barada at some point. Nevertheless, the Lucchese family has been taking a page out of the West Side's handbook, and I'll leave it at that. Do you think the Gambino family is doing well relative to most families? They have some younger members, and some are big earners. Well, for starters, younger is not always better. The Gambino family managed to come out from under the 1990s and are now thriving due to their leadership. With the recent November 2023 Gambino indictment, it's safe to say the mob has adapted pretty well to the government's efforts to remove rackets from their illegal portfolio, a comment left by a viewer. I've always said the mob displays the ability to alter and adapt. Think of it as a roadblock, a legal one. The mob just takes an alternative route. Speaking of Gambinos, the Lafort brothers. This past September 11th to be specific, Joseph and James Lafort pled guilty to racketeering conspiracy, securities fraud, obstruction of justice, among other charges. They were operating in Philadelphia with the company called Complete Solutions Group, Inc., under the name of Par Funding, a cash advance company which provided loans to small businesses, otherwise known as merchant cash advance, loans that at times were charged up to a 400% interest rate and alleged to have generated over $100 million. In addition, they sold promissory notes to the public and misled investors regarding Par Funding's actual business, as well as how their investments would be put to use. They agreed to sentences of 13.5 to 16.5 years and 9 to 11.5 years, as well as paying millions of dollars in restitution. Being they were operating out of Philadelphia, it's more than likely an agreement was in place where they would cut the Philly mob in for a piece of the action. Why is the Anthony Villani gambling case taking so long to reach a conclusion? They were indicted in September 2022 for operating a large-scale online gambling business, and it's only been 2 years. Cases can take years, well over 2, to conclude. Please remember to like this video if you haven't already, as it helps with the algorithm. And for anyone who wants to show their appreciation, or more crucially, help keep this podcast going, you can do so by the Super Thanks icon down below, or the PayPal Cash App links in the video's description. And I'd like to thank everyone who's donated, as it helps tremendously to keep things going. I'll end this with a comment from a longtime subscriber and friend of the show, and myself as well. I met a young guy yesterday. I've known this guy since he was a young kid. This kid was very tough and a capable young man. I saw him with 2 guys who were made. He made the wrong decision and decided he would just take the easy way out. Very sad decision on his part. He doesn't realize it yet, but he took the hard way. Naturally, I agree 100%. We make decisions, and I'm guilty of this myself, without weighing options or the pros and cons. Anyone placing the mob on a scale would clearly see the cons heavily outweigh any pros. When a person decides to join that life, or rather when that life picks a person, you're basically saying goodbye to your freedom in every sense of the word. I'll put it this way. Who needs a mob of guys telling you what to do, how to do it, and when to do it, what's right and what's wrong, and more importantly, to do as we say, not as we do? A life where loyalty is by no means repaid with loyalty back. Never lose sight of the fact that we came into this world alone. We weren't ushered by any mob. So if that young man is listening, I say to you, choose wisely.